A single stretch of Nevada desert holds the world's most explosive secret. For decades, Area 51 has been the epicenter of whispers, a place where official silence fuels wild speculation about alien technology and government cover-ups. By the end of this journey, you will have a complete picture of how a real military base became a global legend, separating the plausible evidence from the persistent myths. We will explore the physicist who claimed to touch a flying saucer and the moment a viral internet joke forced the military to take a stand. What do you truly believe is hidden behind those fences? The truth is often less dramatic than fiction, but just as fascinating. Long before the first flying saucer rumor ever touched the desert floor, Area 51 had a very real and critical purpose. It was born not from a crashed alien vessel, but from a desperate need for a technological edge during the Cold War. In the mid-1950s, the United States was desperate to know what was happening inside the Soviet Union. Traditional spy planes flew too low and were easily shot down, leaving leaders blind to potential threats. The solution was to build an aircraft that could fly so high it was essentially invisible to radar and out of reach of enemy missiles. This project, the creation of the U-2 spy plane, needed a home. The Central Intelligence Agency and the United States Air Force scoured maps and found it, a remote, flat, dry lakebed called Groom Lake, nestled within the vast Nevada test and training range. It was isolated, secure, and perfect. In 1955, construction crews arrived under a shroud of absolute secrecy. These men, later known among themselves as the original beekeepers, were told they were building a facility for radar testing. They lived in a temporary camp, worked under the blistering sun, and were forbidden from discussing their work with anyone, even their families. They built runways, hangars, and support buildings, creating a fully functional airbase out of nothing but dust and determination. The secrecy was so intense that even the base's existence was not officially acknowledged for decades. Declassified documents now show the meticulous planning, the flight paths, and the operational details of the U-2 and its even more advanced successor, the SR-71 Blackbird. These were real machines of incredible engineering, skimming the edge of space, their silhouettes strange and otherworldly against the dawn sky. To a civilian on the ground, seeing such a strange, silent craft at 70,000 feet, it would have looked utterly impossible, like something not of this world. And that is the crucial point, the very reality of Area 51, its legitimate and vital secret work, created the perfect conditions for a legend to grow. The government's necessary silence was interpreted as a guilty one. The strange-looking aircraft became unidentified flying objects. The secrecy bred suspicion, and the void of information was eagerly filled by imagination. So we begin not with a conspiracy, but with a simple, powerful fact. The base was real, its missions were real, and its shadow was the first thing the world ever truly saw. That necessary silence over Groom Lake created a vacuum, and nature, as they say, abhors a vacuum. For decades, the void was filled with whispers, but those whispers needed a source, a point of origin. They found it not in Nevada, but in the wind-swept desert of New Mexico, in an event that happened 8 years before the U-2 ever took flight. The story begins, as so many do, with a crash. In early July of 1947, something came down on a ranch near the town of Roswell. The local sheriff was contacted, who then alerted the Roswell Army Airfield. What happened next is the spark that lit the entire modern UFO phenomenon. The base's public information officer issued a press release stating, in no uncertain terms, that the military had recovered a, quote, flying disc. Newspapers ran with the story. For one brief, incredible day, the United States government had officially announced the recovery of an alien spacecraft. Then, just as suddenly, the story changed. A senior officer held a press conference displaying fragments of rubber and foil. He stated it was merely the wreckage of a high-altitude weather balloon, part of a then classified project called Mogul designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. The flying disc story was retracted, the press lost interest, and the Roswell incident faded from public view for nearly 30 years. It was not a story about Area 51, not yet. It was a story about a retraction, about an official story that changed overnight. That seed of doubt, that question of what was really found in the New Mexico desert, lay dormant. It began to grow again in the late 1970s and exploded in the 1980s when researchers began re-interviewing witnesses, some of whom claimed to have seen not just strange wreckage but unusual, non-human bodies. This is where the connection was forged. Conspiracy theorists, piecing together a puzzle, asked a logical question. If you recovered technology not of this world, where would you take it? Where would you have a secure, remote facility staffed by the nation's top scientists, a place that officially did not exist? The answer to them was obvious. They began to weave a narrative that the Roswell wreckage, and perhaps even its otherworldly occupants, were secretly transported to that mysterious box on the map in Nevada. This link, though entirely speculative and supported by no verifiable evidence, was catastrophic to any hope of a mundane explanation for Area 51. It provided a perfect origin story for the base's secrecy. The mythos was now complete. You had a sacred site, Area 51, and you had a founding relic, the Roswell crash. The two became permanently fused in books, in documentaries, and in the public imagination. The base was no longer just a place where secret planes were built. It was transformed into the inner sanctum, the warehouse of the ultimate secret. Every strange light, every whispered rumor about reverse engineering now had a backstory. The government's continued silence on both topics was seen not as separate policies, but as a single, continuous cover-up of the truth. This powerful narrative persists because it answers a deep human need for a coherent story, one that connects dots across time and space. It gives the mystery a birthplace and a destination. The Roswell story provided a powerful myth, but it was a man named Bob Lazar who gave that myth a technical manual. In 1989, a physicist named Bob Lazar sat down for a series of interviews with investigative journalist George Knapp in Las Vegas. What he described was not a vague rumor from decades past, but a first-hand account of working on alien technology. Lazar claimed he was hired through a defense contractor to work at a secret site south of Area 51, known as S4. He said he was part of a small team tasked with reverse engineering 9 disc-shaped craft stored in a hangar built into a mountainside. His story was filled with startlingly specific details. He described the spacecraft's propulsion system as powered by a stable, super-heavy element not on the periodic table, which he called Element 115. He claimed the craft manipulated gravity itself, creating a field that bent spacetime to move. Perhaps most compellingly, he knew the exact nights of secret test flights over the Groom Lake Range, information Knapp was able to independently verify by observing strange, glowing objects performing impossible maneuvers on those scheduled evenings. Lazar even produced a pay stub, a W-2 form, from the mysterious Naval Intelligence Office that supposedly oversaw the project. For many, this was the smoking gun. Here was a man with a background in physics offering a coherent technical explanation for how these craft might work, and he seemed to have proof of his employment. The story was a sensation. It transformed Area 51 from a vague repository of secrets into an active laboratory, a place where humans were, at that very moment, trying to unlock the secrets of the stars. It defined the modern conspiracy, shifting the narrative from "they have the wreckage" to "they are flying the ships," but almost immediately the cracks began to show. Investigators could find no record of Lazar earning degrees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology or the California Institute of Technology, the prestigious institutions he claimed had educated him. His former employers had no knowledge of his alleged high-level security work. skeptics argued his knowledge of test flights could have come from insiders at the base who were not involved with aliens, but with advanced human-made aircraft. The very specificity of his story became a point of contention. Was it the mark of a genuine insider or the carefully constructed fiction of a very knowledgeable hoaxer? The government, as always, maintained its blanket denial, refusing to confirm or deny Lazar's employment at any facility. This left the public in a familiar bind, forced to weigh a captivating, detailed personal testimony against a complete lack of verifiable evidence and several glaring inconsistencies. Whether you see Bob Lazar as a courageous whistleblower or a brilliant con artist, his impact is undeniable. He injected hard science fiction into the UFO debate and gave a generation a precise image of what they believed was happening inside those desert hangars. He made the mystery feel current, urgent, and tantalizingly close to being solved. Bob Lazar's story hinges on two pillars, a material and a machine. The material was element 115, a substance he claimed powered the alien craft. For years, this was the easiest part of his story to dismiss. When he spoke in 1989, the periodic table ended at element 109. Claiming a stable, super-heavy element existed was, to mainstream science, pure fantasy. It sounded like science fiction jargon, a detail invented to sound convincing. Then, in 2003, a team of Russian and American scientists announced they had successfully synthesized a few atoms of element 115 in a particle accelerator. They named it Moscovium. To Lazar's supporters, this was vindication. How could he have known? Skeptics counter that the science of the time was already predicting an island of stability for super-heavy elements, and that the synthesized Moscovium is wildly unstable, lasting milliseconds before decaying, nothing like the stable, workable fuel Lazar described. It was a correct label on an entirely different substance. The second pillar was the machine itself, which Lazar called the sport model. His description was not of a vague saucer, but of a specific device. He said it was about 40 feet wide with a central reactor chamber below a dome. The craft, he claimed, did not push against air like a jet, but instead used the gravity-amplifying properties of element 115 to essentially pull itself toward a destination, warping space-time around it. This idea of gravity propulsion moved UFO speculation from mere lights in the sky to a theoretical physics discussion. It gave the phenomenon a mechanism that, while far beyond our current engineering, was not entirely outside the realm of theoretical possibility. The most compelling corroboration came not from documents, but from the night sky. Investigative journalist George Knapp, along with others, went to a vantage point overlooking the Groom Lake Range on the specific Wednesday and Friday nights Lazar said test flights occurred. They filmed what they described as brilliant, pulsating lights performing maneuvers that defied conventional aircraft, making sharp 90-degree turns and instantaneous stops. These sightings were recorded, and witnesses included a former police officer. This evidence is visceral. It moves the story from a man's word to a shared, observable event. So why does officialdom dismiss it so completely? The government's position is that any unusual lights were sightings of advanced but entirely terrestrial prototype aircraft. The strange maneuvers could be optical illusions or the result of cutting-edge thrust vector technology. They maintain Lazar was never employed in any capacity related to such projects. The enduring power of his story lies in this perfect storm. He provided a scientific hook with element 115, a tangible image with the sport model, and a verifiable event with the test flights. It creates a narrative that feels too detailed to be wholly invented, yet remains just beyond the reach of definitive proof. This leaves each person to decide, are they looking at the edges of the greatest secret ever kept, or the masterwork of a very persuasive storyteller who knew how to blend just enough truth with a fantastic tale? That unresolved question is what fuels the mystery to this day. The line between a secret aircraft and an unidentified flying object is often just a matter of perspective. While Bob Lazar spoke of alien technology, another compelling narrative was taking shape, one rooted firmly in human engineering. This is the world of black projects, the classified military programs that push the boundaries of aviation in total secrecy. For decades, the most legendary of these rumored projects has borne a single, evocative name: Aurora. In the late 1980s and early 90s, aviation enthusiasts and journalists began piecing together clues. They pointed to mysterious budget allocations in Pentagon documents, references to Aurora as a funding category. They listened for strange sonic booms over the California coast, described as skyquakes or donuts on a rope contrails, patterns that suggested an aircraft flying at speeds far beyond any known jet. The theory was that Aurora was a hypersonic spy plane, a successor to the SR-71 Blackbird, capable of flying at Mach 5 or 6. It was the perfect terrestrial explanation for a wave of high-speed, high-altitude UFO sightings during that era. If you were a pilot or a civilian who saw a strange, fast-moving light streak across the sky, and the government had no aircraft it would admit to that could move like that, what else would you think it was? The secrecy surrounding black projects does not just hide the truth, it actively creates new mysteries. The government's standard response to inquiries about Aurora has been a flat denial that such a program ever existed under that name. Yet the rumors persist because they fit a historical pattern. The U-2 and the SR-71 were once the stuff of wild speculation before they were unveiled. Aurora could simply be the next chapter in that book, a secret kept not because it is alien, but because it is a vital military advantage. This brings us to one of the most credible and widespread UFO phenomena of recent decades, the black triangles. Throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s, thousands of people across the globe, from Belgium to Illinois, reported seeing massive, silent, low-flying triangular craft. These were not distant lights, but structured vehicles, often described as having a light at each corner and a central red glow, moving with a slow, ominous grace that defied the roar of conventional jets. The Belgian wave in 1989 and 90 is particularly famous, with radar corroboration, and even Belgian Air Force F-16 jets scrambled to intercept an object they could not catch. For UFO believers, these were the ultimate proof, a fleet of otherworldly motherships. But within the world of aviation speculation, a different theory emerged. These triangles were not invaders from another star system, but test flights of a revolutionary new type of aircraft, rumored to be called the TR-3B Astra. This craft, the theory goes, uses a radically different propulsion system. Instead of jets, it might use a plasma-based technology to reduce its radar signature and create a cushion of ionized air, allowing for silent, seemingly anti-gravity flight. The black triangles, according to this view, were prototypes of a next-generation stealth platform, perhaps a nuclear-powered reconnaissance aircraft or even a psychological operations tool designed to appear supernatural. So, which is it, an alien visitation or a human-made marvel? The frustrating, fascinating answer is that both explanations thrive in the same environment of absolute secrecy. When the military develops a vehicle that looks like nothing ever seen before, flies in ways physics says it shouldn't, and its very existence is officially denied, it becomes functionally identical to a UFO. The witness sees the same thing, the government gives the same non-answer, and the public is left with the same awe and confusion. This is the perpetual cycle of Area 51. A real breakthrough in aerospace technology is so advanced, so cloaked in shadows, that it becomes indistinguishable from magic, or in this case, from a message from the stars. The secrecy, intended to protect a tactical edge, guarantees that every test flight will be logged in another civilian's UFO report, feeding the very mythos the government tries to ignore. But the daily reality of the base is far more mundane and far more human than the legends suggest. To understand how a place like this functions, you must follow the workers. Every weekday morning in the pre-dawn hours, hundreds of people board unmarked white buses at a private terminal near McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. They show special badges, not tickets. Their destination is a fleet of unassuming Boeing 737 jets, each painted in a distinct, cheerful scheme of white with a bold red stripe. This is Janet Airlines, an acronym whose official meaning is classified, but which insiders jokingly call just another non-existent terminal. It is the world's most exclusive commuter airline with a single daily route from Las Vegas to the heart of the secret. The passengers are engineers, physicists, technicians, and support staff. They sign lifetime secrecy agreements so comprehensive that they cannot even disclose the nature of their non-disclosure agreements. For them, Area 51 is not a myth, it is a workplace. They call it the office or the site. Former employees, speaking in broad terms after retirement, describe a campus-like atmosphere. There are cafeterias, recreational facilities, and even a bowling alley. The work is compartmentalized, meaning an engineer might spend years designing a single component without ever knowing the full system it fits into. The culture is one of intense professionalism and absolute discretion. You do not ask questions about projects that are not yours. You do not discuss your day when you fly home on the Janet plane, surrounded by your equally silent colleagues. This human infrastructure is the true engine of the base. It is a reminder that behind the towering fences and armed patrols, there are people with families, mortgages, and weekend plans, all bound by a promise of silence. The Janet flights are the most visible clue, a regular, scheduled heartbeat of secrecy that anyone can observe from the perimeter of Las Vegas Airport. They prove the base is not a ghost town, but a living, breathing facility with a daily pulse of activity. Yet, even this routine operation deepens the mystery. Watching those red-striped planes taxi and take off one after another, you cannot help but wonder what conversation is happening in row 12. What problem is being solved today behind those guarded doors? The very normalcy of the commute makes the secrecy feel even more profound. For those not on the inside, the only way to glimpse this world is from the outside looking in. A network of dusty, remote roads in the Nevada desert leads to a handful of vantage points on public land, places where the curious have gathered for decades. The most famous landmark is not a mountain peak, but a solitary mailbox painted black, standing alongside a lonely highway miles from the base's actual gate. This black mailbox became a legendary rendezvous point for UFO researchers and enthusiasts. It belonged to a local rancher who endured endless interruptions from people hoping to catch a glimpse of something otherworldly. The mailbox was a symbol, a tangible point on a map where the mythical and the mundane intersected. More strategic were the high ridges with clear sight lines toward the Groom Lake runways. Places with names like Freedom Ridge and Whiteside's Peak became open-air observatories. Here, civilian watchers would set up tripods with high-powered cameras and night vision scopes logging every movement. They documented the Janet flights coming and going. They recorded the strange, slow-rolling takeoffs of aircraft hidden under tarps, shapes that defied conventional design. They tracked the patterns of security patrols, the infamous white pickup trucks known as camo dudes, that would appear on distant ridges to observe the observers. These watchers created a grassroots intelligence network, a community dedicated to piecing together the base's rhythms from the scattered clues it could not hide. Their photographs and logs form a unique archive, not of alien craft, but of intense, secretive human activity. They proved that something worth extraordinary effort to conceal was happening. The government, in turn, made extraordinary efforts to shut them down. In the mid-1990s, the United States Air Force seized control of thousands of acres of public land surrounding the base, including Freedom Ridge and Whitesides. The overlooks were closed, fenced off, and placed under military restriction. The act was legal, citing national security, but its message was clear: the era of easy observation was over. The perimeter had been pushed back, deepening the shroud. Today, the closest legal vantage point is the Tikaboo Peak Trail, a grueling hike that offers a distant, shimmering view of the base through atmospheric haze. The watchers persist, but from much farther away. This silent, ongoing conflict between public curiosity and official secrecy is fought not with weapons, but with land claims and telephoto lenses. It is a tangible, physical manifestation of the mystery, a chess game played across the desert basin, where every move to see is met with a move to hide. The silent standoff between watchers and the military was a slow, patient game. But in 2019, the internet decided to play a different one entirely. That summer, a joke detonated across social media, transforming decades of quiet speculation into a global spectacle overnight. It began with a simple Facebook event created by a college student as a lark. The title was a battle cry for the meme generation: "Storm Area 51, they cannot stop all of us." The description was absurdly straightforward. We will all meet at the Area 51 Alien Center tourist attraction and coordinate our entry. If we Naruto run, we can move faster than their bullets. Let us see them aliens. It was pure internet absurdity, a blend of anime references and conspiracy theory. No one, not even its creator, expected what happened next. Millions of people clicked attending. The event went viral, spreading from niche forums to mainstream news headlines around the world. A digital joke was suddenly knocking on the very real, very heavily fortified gates of the most secretive place on Earth. The response from authorities was swift and serious. The United States Air Force and the United States Navy, which oversees the base, issued public statements. They were not amused. Officials warned that the base was an active test facility and that any attempt to trespass would be met with force. They reminded the public of the legal consequences, which included fines and imprisonment. Social media platforms even began removing posts that they deemed could incite violence. The tiny town of Roswell, Nevada, population under 100, found itself at the epicenter of an impending invasion it never asked for. Local business owners and residents braced for chaos, uncertain if they would be overrun by hundreds of thousands of meme-fueled adventurers. They stocked up on supplies, prepared for traffic jams stretching to the horizon, and wondered if their quiet desert home would become a scene of international incident. The designated weekend arrived in September. Instead of a chaotic siege, something else unfolded. A few thousand people actually made the journey, not to storm the base but to party near it. They converged on the desert outside the tiny town of Hiko, Nevada, for a hastily organized music festival called Alien Stock. The scene was surreal. People in alien costumes camped in the dust. Influencers live-streamed to millions. Vendors sold alien-themed merchandise. There were more selfie sticks than protest signs. A handful of individuals did attempt to approach the base perimeter, only to be quickly and calmly arrested by sheriff's deputies. The Great Storm had turned into a peaceful, if bizarre, desert carnival. This event was a perfect collision of 21st century culture. It demonstrated how an online meme could manifest in the physical world, forcing a reaction from the most secretive branches of government. The military's stern warnings were a rare moment of public engagement, a break from their decades-long policy of simple silence. They were not debating the existence of UFOs, they were defending a military asset from a perceived threat, even if that threat was born from a joke. For the believers, the government's serious tone was revealing. Why such a forceful response to a silly Facebook event, unless they really were hiding something unimaginable? For skeptics, the event highlighted how the myth had been absorbed into pop culture, stripped of its gravity and turned into a lifestyle brand. The Storm Area 51 phenomenon ultimately revealed less about aliens and more about us. It showed the enduring, almost playful public desire to pierce that veil of secrecy, to collectively shout into the void just to hear what kind of echo comes back. The base's fences held firm, but for a weekend, the world's attention was locked on that remote desert valley, proving that the mystery of Area 51 had evolved from a government secret into a shared global story, one that could be joked about, gathered around, and yes, even festivalized. The government's wall of silence finally showed a crack, not with a bang, but with a quiet document release. For decades, officials would not even utter the words Area 51. That absolute denial ended in 2013, when the Central Intelligence Agency declassified a trove of historical records. In dry, bureaucratic language, these papers formally acknowledged the base's existence for the first time. They detailed its original purpose, the testing of the U-2 and SR-71 Blackbird spy planes during the Cold War. To the public, this was monumental news, a long-awaited admission. To historians, it was simply the declassification of old secrets, a confirmation of facts that had been widely accepted for years. The government was not confessing to anything new. It was finally admitting to what everyone already knew happened half a century ago. This is the pattern, a slow, strategic drip of information, always decades behind the public curiosity. The narrative is carefully managed, releasing only what is no longer considered sensitive, thereby shaping the story on their terms. A more startling shift came in 2020, when the United States Department of Defense took the unprecedented step of officially releasing 3 Navy videos. These were the now famous tic-tac, gimbal, and go-fast videos showing encounters between military pilots and objects they could not identify. The Pentagon confirmed the videos were real and labeled the phenomena UAP, or Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, a new term meant to sound more clinical and less loaded than UFO. Officials were careful in their language. They stated these objects displayed flight characteristics unknown to our current technology, and that they posed a potential threat to national security. They did not and have not said the words alien or extraterrestrial. This official acknowledgement of the unknown was a seismic event. It validated the experiences of the pilots and shifted the conversation from the fringe to the floor of the United States Senate. Hearings were held. A new office was established to investigate UAP reports. The message was clear: the government is taking this seriously, but seriously for what reason? This is where the analysis becomes critical. Does this new transparency represent a genuine effort to build public trust and unravel a genuine mystery? Or is it a sophisticated form of narrative control? Consider the timing. The release of the UAP videos came after they had already been leaked and circulated online for years. By officially releasing them, the Pentagon reclaimed the story. They framed it within a context of national security and technological rivalry, often hinting these objects could be advanced drones from adversarial nations. This is a plausible terrestrial explanation that directs attention away from more exotic possibilities. Furthermore, the information released is always fragmentary. We see compelling videos, but we do not see the full sensor data from the aircraft. We hear about objects violating restricted airspace, but we are not told what, if anything, was recovered. The government admits to the question but provides no definitive answer. This controlled disclosure serves multiple purposes. It appeases a public and a Congress demanding answers. It potentially warns adversaries that we are aware of their capabilities, if that is indeed what they are, and it maintains the ultimate shield of classification over whatever the core truth may be. So does this build trust? For some, yes. The simple act of admission feels like progress. For others, every carefully worded statement feels like a distraction, a magician's gesture with one hand while the other hides the real trick. The greatest secret kept at Area 51 may not be about aliens at all, but about the profound power that comes from controlling what the world is allowed to wonder about and when. The mystery deepens not in the darkness, but in the carefully measured light they choose to shine upon it. This shift from internet memes to congressional hearings is perhaps the most startling development in the entire saga. The conversation about unidentified objects is no longer confined to late-night radio or blurry YouTube videos. It is now happening under the bright lights of the United States Capitol, with intelligence officials raising their right hands and speaking under oath. The catalyst was the establishment of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, later renamed the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. This was not a group of UFO enthusiasts, but a formal Pentagon office tasked with investigating encounters that pose a genuine threat to flight safety and national security. Their very existence signaled a profound change in official attitude. For decades, the policy was to dismiss and debunk. Now it is to collect, analyze, and understand. This new approach reached its first public peak in May of 2022, when the House Intelligence Committee held an open hearing on UAP. For the first time in over 50 years, senior defense officials sat before Congress and discussed the phenomena openly. The Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence showed declassified videos and photographs, acknowledging that there were incidents that could not be explained. He stated that the number of reported sightings was growing into the hundreds, and that they were prioritizing cases where objects appeared to demonstrate advanced technology or unusual flight characteristics. The message was clear and sobering. Our military pilots are seeing things we cannot identify, and we do not know what they are or who is operating them. The hearing was a landmark event not for what it revealed, but for its tone. It was serious, bipartisan, and devoid of the stigma that had haunted this topic for generations. The government was finally saying out loud that the mystery is real. Then, in July of 2023, the conversation exploded. A second hearing featured a new kind of witness, a whistleblower named David Grush. Grush was not a pilot who had seen something strange. He was a former high-ranking intelligence officer who had served on the UAP task force itself. His testimony was not about lights in the sky, but about programs buried deep within the government. Under oath, Grush claimed that for years, the United States has been running a covert, multi-decade crash retrieval program for non-human origin vehicles. He alleged the government is in possession of not just craft, but biological material from the pilots of those craft. Most explosively, he stated there exists a secret reverse engineering program aimed at understanding and adapting this otherworldly technology, and that this program has been illegally shielded from congressional oversight. While he carefully avoided naming specific locations like Area 51, the implication for anyone familiar with the law was deafening. He was describing, in official legal language, the exact conspiracy that had swirled around that Nevada desert base for 70 years. The reaction was a study in contrasts. Grush's claims were supported by other former officials, also under oath, who vouched for his credibility. Yet, the Pentagon and the intelligence community inspectors general offered no confirmation, only stating the investigations into his allegations were ongoing. This is the modern face of the mystery. It is no longer about a rancher finding strange foil in 1947. It is about a decorated officer walking into a congressional hearing room and accusing his own government of hiding the greatest discovery in human history. The questions it raises are profound. If Grush is telling the truth, then every wild story about hangars at Area 51 containing otherworldly machinery moves from fantasy to potential fact. The secrecy would not be about spy planes, but about physics-defying artifacts. If he is mistaken or misleading, then we are witnessing an elaborate and damaging deception playing out at the highest levels. Either scenario is extraordinary. These hearings represent a potential turning point, a legal and political pressure being applied directly to the vault of secrecy. Congress is now using its power of oversight, its right to demand answers from the military and intelligence agencies to pry that vault open. Subpoenas are being discussed. More whistleblowers are reportedly coming forward. The process is slow, methodical, and fraught with classification barriers, but its direction is unmistakable. For the first time, the seekers of the truth have gavels and committee seats. This is not a storming of the gates with Naruto runs. It is a systematic, bureaucratic siege. Whether this leads to definitive disclosure, to the unveiling of a craft in a hangar, or simply to more opaque answers and deeper classifications remains to be seen. But the very fact that it is happening at all suggests we may finally be approaching the inner ring of the mystery, not through a desert fence but through the halls of power. The search for truth inevitably attracts those who profit from crafting convincing lies. While Congress holds sober hearings, another side of the Area 51 phenomenon thrives in the shadows, an entire industry built on skillful deception. To navigate this landscape, you must learn to recognize the art of the fake, and no hoax has ever captured the global imagination quite like the alien autopsy film of 1995. Promoted by a British entrepreneur named Ray Santilli, the grainy, black and white footage purported to show a secret government autopsy of a non-human entity recovered from Roswell. It was a visceral, shocking spectacle. Men in hazmat suits probed a strange, hairless body on a slab, removing organs that looked utterly alien. The film felt authentic with its dated film quality, the clinical detachment of the doctors, and the eerie, silent atmosphere. For a public hungry for a glimpse behind the curtain, it was a feast. Major television networks around the world paid millions to air it, treating it as a potential historic document. It became a cultural touchstone, searing a specific image of a gray alien into the public mind. So why did so many believe it? The hoax was effective because it exploited our expectations of what secrecy should look like. The film was not crisp and clear, it was murky and damaged as if it had been hidden for decades. The procedures seemed professional, yet the being was bizarre. It felt exactly like a leaked piece of classified evidence should feel, rough around the edges and profoundly unsettling. The debunking was a slower process built on forensic details. Experts in special effects noted inconsistencies in the fluid dynamics of the fake blood. Pathologists questioned the illogical surgical procedures, but the final nail came from Santilli himself years later, who admitted the film was a reconstruction, though he maintained it was based on real footage he had once seen but that had degraded. He claimed he hired a sculptor and special effects artists to recreate what he witnessed. Whether there was any original truth to his story is lost to contradiction, but the film itself was conclusively shown to be a fabrication. The alien autopsy was a masterclass in emotional persuasion over factual rigor, proving that a compelling story, told with just enough technical plausibility, could bypass critical thought for millions. It set a dangerous precedent, demonstrating there was a massive, lucrative market for Area 51 adjacent content, regardless of its authenticity. This opened the floodgates. The following decade saw a torrent of forged documents, often typed on what appeared to be vintage government letterhead, detailing crash retrievals and secret committees. Blurry photographs of odd shapes in hangars, always just out of focus, circulated in magazines and early internet forums. Sensationalist television shows adopted a formula, presenting every piece of questionable evidence with ominous music and dramatic narration, blurring the line between investigation and entertainment. This pollution of the information ecosystem serves a dual purpose. For the hoaxers, the motivation is often fame or financial gain. For others, however, the motivation may be more strategic. Disinformation is a tool not just for con artists but for intelligence agencies. In the shadowy world of espionage, seeding the public domain with clever fakes is a classic tactic to discredit real leaks, confuse adversaries, and bury genuine secrets under a mountain of nonsense. If every potential whistleblower knows the landscape is already filled with proven hoaxes, their own claims become easier to dismiss. This creates a hall of mirrors where nothing can be trusted, a perfect environment for real secrets to hide. Learning to spot the red flags is therefore a crucial skill. Be wary of evidence that is perpetually just out of reach, the original film that is always lost, the document whose sole copy was destroyed. Question the motives of those selling the story, whether for book sales or television rights. Look for anachronisms, details that do not match the claimed time period, like a font on a document that did not exist in the 1940s. The presence of a single, uncorroborated source is another major warning sign. This environment of fakery does not necessarily disprove the underlying mystery. Instead, it complicates it beyond measure. It means that any genuine signal of something extraordinary must first be extracted from an overwhelming tide of noise, a task that has frustrated serious researchers for generations. The truth about Area 51 is guarded not only by fences and security clearances, but by a wilderness of mirrors where reflection and reality are impossible to tell apart. The human mind is a story-making machine, and the void of official information is its most fertile ground. To understand why Area 51's legend refuses to die, we must look inward at the deep psychological needs it fulfills. In a world where satellites map every inch of the globe and our phones track our every move, genuine mystery has become a rare commodity. We live in an age of overwhelming documentation where answers are often a search query away. This can feel strangely unsatisfying. The vast, uncharted territories of our ancestors have vanished, replaced by a planet that feels known, measured, and explained. Where, then, do we place our sense of wonder? Area 51 provides a perfect answer. It is a literal blank space on the map, a fortress of the unknown in our own backyard. It offers a modern frontier, a puzzle with no official solution, allowing anyone to become an explorer of the idea. The mystery itself becomes the destination, a psychological refuge from a world that sometimes feels too exposed, too predictable. This craving for the unknown intertwines with a profound and specific cultural distrust. For generations raised on the revelations of the Cold War, the Pentagon Papers, Watergate, and the Iran-Contra affair, government secrecy is not just a policy, it is a proven pattern of deception. The official story is often assumed to be the cover story. When an institution has a documented history of lying about significant events, why would anyone believe its denials about something as monumental as contact with non-human intelligence? The post-Vietnam, post-Watergate era fundamentally rewired the public's relationship with authority. Skepticism became the default position. Area 51, with its relentless official silence and aggressive perimeter security, fits perfectly into this narrative of the untrustworthy state. It becomes the ultimate symbol of paternalistic power, a place where a privileged few decide what the masses are allowed to know about reality itself. The belief in its alien secrets is in part an act of defiance against that controlled narrative, a way of saying you cannot hide the truth from us forever. On a deeper, almost spiritual level, the Area 51 mythos functions as a potent modern religion. It contains all the core elements, sacred texts in the form of whistleblower testimonies like Bob Lazar's, prophets who bring revelations, and a promised land of hidden knowledge that will revolutionize our world. The alleged alien technology is not just machinery, it is salvation tech, a source of clean energy, miraculous medicine, or cosmic travel that could solve humanity's greatest problems. This narrative taps into a powerful archetype, the idea that a transformative truth is being kept from us by a corrupt priesthood, in this case the military-industrial complex. Believing you have glimpsed this hidden truth provides a sense of purpose and belonging, a shared creed with other believers. It creates a community bound not by traditional faith, but by a shared conviction that they are among the enlightened few who see through the official veil. Ultimately, the remote base in the Nevada desert serves as a perfect modern mythic place. Like Mount Olympus or Avalon, it exists at the edge of the known world, a location where the ordinary rules of reality are said to bend. We project onto it our collective anxieties about runaway technology and unchecked government power. Simultaneously, we project our most profound hopes for connection, for meaning, for a universe that is far more wondrous than our daily lives suggest. The lack of concrete proof is not a bug in this system, it is a feature. Absolute proof would end the mystery, and with it, the powerful psychological roles the story plays. The enduring legend of Area 51 is less about what is inside the hangars and more about what is inside us, a timeless need for mystery, a deep-seated suspicion of power, and a hopeful, stubborn belief that the greatest story ever told is still waiting, just beyond the next ridge to be discovered. Ancient cultures did not need fences of chain link and motion sensors to mark the boundaries of the forbidden. They had stories. Across the world, our ancestors told tales of places that were physically present, yet utterly off-limits. In the misty hills of Ireland and Scotland, there were the fairy forts, ringed mounds said to be gateways to the kingdom of the Shia. To disturb these forts, to cut down a tree or move a stone, was to invite catastrophic misfortune. In the myths of Greece, Mount Olympus was the home of the gods, shrouded in cloud, a place no mortal could ascend. The Garden of Eden, in the Abrahamic tradition, was a paradise guarded by a flaming sword after humanity's exile. These were not mere locations, they were narrative devices, physical manifestations of a line between the ordinary world and a realm of profound, often dangerous power. Area 51, in our modern technological mythology, serves the exact same purpose. It is our fairy fort, it is our forbidden mountain. The parallels are startling and deeply revealing. These ancient zones were always associated with beings of superior power, whether they were the graceful, capricious fairies or the mighty, flawed gods of Olympus. The inhabitants were not human, they operated by rules we did not understand, possessing knowledge and abilities far beyond our own. Is that not the core of the Area 51 legend? The base is said to be inhabited not by engineers in lab coats, but by the ultimate other, the non-human intelligence, and its technology is our era's version of magic, so advanced it appears as supernatural force. The fairy folk could glamour, making one see a splendid palace where there was only a barren hill. The technology rumored at Area 51 allegedly manipulates gravity itself, bending the very fabric of reality, a glamour of physics. The consequences of trespass are also mythically consistent. Ancient stories warned that those who ventured into the fairy ring might be trapped for 100 years or return broken and mad, unable to readapt to the human world. The warnings posted around the Nevada perimeter are less poetic but just as dire, use of deadly force authorized. The government's stern admonitions and the very real legal penalties create a modern taboo, a secular version of the old supernatural threat. This narrative structure fulfills a universal, hardwired human need. We are pattern seekers and story builders. We require places on our mental map that are labeled "Here there be dragons." These zones of the unknown give shape to our understanding of the known. They create a frontier for curiosity and fear. They house our collective anxieties about forces we cannot control, while also nurturing our most potent hopes for transcendence. The secret guarded in the fairy fort was never just a treasure, it was a transformation. To eat the food of the Shia was to be trapped in Elfheim forever, changed. To gain the knowledge of the gods was to risk divine wrath. The secret rumored at Area 51, the otherworldly technology, promises a similar existential transformation for all of humanity, an end to energy scarcity, a leap to the stars, a fundamental rewriting of our place in the cosmos. The power of the myth lies in its perpetual incompleteness. Just as no hero in the old tales could ever truly bring back a coherent report from the land of the gods, no whistleblower or leaked document has ever provided the full, undeniable picture of what is inside. The truth remains always just out of reach, shimmering on the desert horizon, sustaining the story for another generation. This is why the legend persists with such vitality. It is not a faulty conspiracy theory waiting to be disproven. It is a living myth perfectly adapted to our time. It uses the language of security clearances and aerospace contracts instead of spells and enchantments, but it plays the same deep, resonant chord in the human psyche. We have not outgrown our need for sacred, forbidden spaces. We have simply built them with concrete, barbed wire, and a silence that speaks volumes. The desert holds more than just secrets of the sky. It holds the residue of what falls to earth. While the world fixated on flying saucers, a quieter, more insidious drama was unfolding for the people who lived and worked in the shadow of the base. This is not a story of alien bodies, but of human ones, and the toxic legacy left behind by decades of classified operations. The mystery here shifts from what they were building to what they were burning and burying, and the profound cost of that silence. For years, whispers circulated among former base employees about strange illnesses, rare cancers, and a nagging sense that their service had come with a hidden price. These were not UFO enthusiasts. They were mechanics, firefighters, and construction workers who had signed secrecy oaths and done their jobs. Their lawsuits would eventually peel back a corner of the national security blanket to reveal something far more mundane and monstrous than any alien: the systematic contamination of their environment and their health. The central allegation is chillingly straightforward. Former workers, including a man named Robert Frost and others, testified in legal proceedings that for years the base operated open-air burn pits. Into these pits went the classified waste of advanced aerospace projects, materials whose exact composition was itself a secret. Witnesses described barrels of unknown chemicals, stacks of exotic composite materials, and used solvents being doused with jet fuel and set ablaze. The smoke from these burns was described as multicolored, thick, and acrid, settling over the base and drifting with the wind. Workers without adequate protective gear reported breathing in the fumes, handling the ash, and suffering immediate effects like blistering skin, burning lungs, and debilitating headaches. The long-term effects, they claim, were catastrophic. They and their families developed clusters of rare cancers, neurological disorders, and autoimmune diseases. Their case was not about UFOs. It was about the right to know what they had been exposed to and to hold someone accountable for the consequences. These individuals found themselves facing a legal barrier as impenetrable as the base's perimeter fence, the state secret's privilege. This is a powerful legal doctrine that allows the government to block court cases if proceeding would risk revealing classified information vital to national security. When the sick workers sued contractors and the government, Justice Department lawyers invoked this privilege. They argued that even discussing what materials were burned or what safety protocols were or were not followed could expose details about still classified technologies and operations. The judges, faced with the government's absolute assertion, had little choice. Case after case was dismissed before evidence could be fully examined. The workers were left in a devastating catch-22. To prove they were poisoned by negligence, they needed to know what poisoned them, but the government declared that what poisoned them was a state secret. The very secrecy that protected the base's missions was now shielding it from liability, leaving the victims without legal recourse. It was a stark demonstration that the cloak of national security could be used not just to protect the country, but to evade responsibility for harm done to its own citizens. The evidence of contamination extends beyond personal testimony. Investigations by journalists and environmental groups have pointed to the likelihood of buried waste. The geography of the base, centered on the ancient Groom Lake dry lake bed, is itself a concern. The porous desert soil and the underlying water table are vulnerable to leaching toxins. While no independent testing is possible on the restricted land, the practices described by workers align with a Cold War-era disregard for environmental safety that has left toxic legacies at other military sites across the nation. The difference here is the absolute wall of secrecy. At other bases, environmental cleanups are public, governed by laws like the Superfund Act. At Area 51, what lies beneath the sand is as classified as what once flew above it. This creates a haunting uncertainty for the communities downwind. The term downwinders originally referred to those exposed to radioactive fallout from above-ground nuclear tests in Nevada in the 1950s. Now, a new generation of downwinders wonders what invisible, unknown compounds might have settled on their land, in their water, and in their bodies, carried on the same desert winds that once hid the contrails of spy planes. This environmental chapter strips the myth of its otherworldly sheen and reveals a raw human tragedy. It shows that the culture of absolute secrecy had tangible, devastating consequences far removed from questions of extraterrestrial life. People got sick, families grieved, and a legal system designed to provide justice was rendered powerless by the invocation of supreme national interest. The burning pits represent a different kind of reverse engineering, not of alien craft but of accountability itself. The state secret's privilege melted down the legal process, leaving only the ashes of unresolved suffering. This proven cover-up, one of toxic negligence rather than alien bodies, forces a difficult question. If the government was willing to use its ultimate secrecy powers to hide its mistakes and avoid responsibility for poisoning its own workers, what else might that power be used to conceal? The answer suggests that the most disturbing secrets of Area 51 may not be about what came from the stars, but about what was left in the soil and in the people right here on Earth. The most compelling evidence often comes not from a blurry photograph, but from a hospital report. On a cold December night in 1980, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and her 7-year-old grandson Colby were driving through a pine forest in East Texas. Their ordinary journey home became a terrifying encounter that would leave permanent scars, both physical and legal. As they rounded a bend, the road ahead was filled with an intense, fiery light. Hovering silently above the trees was a massive, diamond-shaped object described as being as large as a water tower, glowing with a blinding orange-white flame from its underside. The air crackled with heat. More startling than the craft itself was its escort, a fleet of large, double-rotor helicopters, which they counted as 23, that seemed to be herding the immense object through the sky. Betty, demonstrating remarkable courage, stepped out of the car for a closer look. The heat was so severe it warped the car's vinyl roof and burned the soles of her shoes. They watched terrified for several minutes as the spectacle moved slowly away. The immediate aftermath was a descent into agony. Within hours, all three began to exhibit horrific symptoms. Betty Cash was the worst affected. She developed severe burns, blistering skin, nausea, and intense headaches. Her hair began to fall out in clumps. Vicki and Colby suffered similar, though slightly less severe, burns and illness. Their symptoms were textbook cases of acute radiation poisoning. Doctors who treated them were baffled, confirming they presented as if exposed to high levels of ionizing radiation, yet no source could be found. Determined for answers, the women reported the incident to every authority they could think of, including the local police, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the United States Air Force. The response was a uniform, frustrating wall of denial. The military stated unequivocally that they had no aircraft of that description and no helicopters in the area that night. No branch of the service would claim the mysterious diamond or its imposing escort. With their health ruined and their medical bills mounting, Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum did the only thing left to them. They sued the United States government. Their lawsuit was a landmark attempt to hold the military accountable for a traumatic, unexplained event. The case dragged on for years, mired in the same state secrets privilege that would later haunt the Area 51 workers. The government never offered an explanation, only continued denials. Ultimately, a federal judge dismissed the suit, not on the merits of the claim, but because the plaintiffs could not definitively prove which specific government agency was responsible. The craft and its helicopters remained officially unidentified. This left a vacuum, and the public imagination rushed to fill it. If the United States military denied operating such a vehicle, what was it? For conspiracy theorists, the answer was obvious. They pointed to the persistent rumors of a nuclear-powered secret aircraft, perhaps the Aurora platform or a related technology, being tested in remote areas. The scenario they constructed was grimly logical. A cutting-edge, nuclear-powered prototype suffers a critical malfunction over Texas. It begins to emit dangerous radiation. A rapid response team is scrambled, using a fleet of heavy-lift Chinook helicopters to either guide the stricken craft or retrieve its wreckage, all while keeping civilian authorities in the dark. And where would such a damaged, radioactive vehicle be taken? The only facility remote and secure enough to handle such a catastrophe, the only place with the specialized hangars and absolute secrecy required, was Groom Lake. The Cache Landrum incident never happened in Nevada, yet it is permanently woven into the Area 51 tapestry. It exemplifies a critical process in the growth of the myth. Any real-world event involving advanced, unidentified technology and military secrecy becomes a tributary flowing into the same vast river of speculation. The base becomes the default origin and destination for every unexplained machine in the sky. This case is powerful precisely because it is not about belief in aliens, but about 3 credible witnesses with physical injuries failed by every official channel. Their suffering demanded an explanation, and in the absence of an honest one, the legend of Area 51 provided a complete, if unproven, story. It transformed a local tragedy into a key piece of a national mystery, suggesting that the true cost of technological supremacy is sometimes paid by innocent citizens on a dark, lonely road. Beneath the sun-baked runways and isolated hangars, the legend of Area 51 plunges into the Earth itself. For decades, a persistent subplot in the conspiracy narrative has spoken of something far more extensive than what meets the eye, not just a base but a hidden kingdom. These are the stories of deep underground military bases, often called dumb, vast subterranean complexes said to lie beneath the Nevada desert, connected by a secret network of high-speed magnetic levitation trains. The lore describes entire cities carved into the bedrock, multi-level facilities reaching down for miles, housing not just advanced aircraft, but the full, staggering scope of the alleged reverse engineering program. This idea transforms the mystery from a 2-dimensional secret on a dry lake bed into a 3-dimensional labyrinth, a true inner world. The origins of this specific lore are murky, often traced to a shadowy figure known only by the pseudonym Phil Schneider. In the mid-1990s, Schneider gave a series of controversial lectures claiming he was a structural engineer who had worked on secret government tunneling projects. He described a 1979 incident in Dulce, New Mexico, where he said federal forces battled large-eyed, gray alien entities deep underground. His tales included details of vast underground bases built with nuclear-powered tunneling machines that could melt through rock, creating glass-lined tunnels. Schneider's story ended tragically. He was found dead in 1996 under circumstances his supporters called suspicious. His account, impossible to verify and filled with sensational claims, became a foundational text for the dumb mythology, providing a supposed insider's technical blueprint for how such a hidden world could be constructed. The practical reality is that governments do build significant underground facilities and always have. The need to protect critical assets from aerial attack is a constant of modern warfare. During the Cold War, this logic reached its peak. The United States government constructed massive underground command centers like the famous Cheyenne Mountain Complex, hollowed out beneath a mountain in Colorado to survive a nuclear strike. Closer to Area 51, the Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository is a colossal, though never fully operational, tunnel complex bored deep into the volcanic rock. The Department of Energy's Nevada National Security Site, which surrounds the base, is honeycombed with tunnels used for subcritical nuclear experiments. The technology for large-scale tunneling is very real. Tunnel boring machines, while not the fanciful nuclear melters of Schneider's stories, are engineering marvels that can excavate miles of passageway. So, the seed of truth is there. The military has both the motivation and the capability to build substantial underground spaces for protection and secrecy. This is where the plausible meets the fantastical. The leap from a hardened command bunker or a waste storage tunnel to an entire subterranean city with maglev trains and alien laboratories is a monumental one, unsupported by any public evidence. The energy requirements alone for maintaining a miles-deep, city-sized facility with breathable air and stable temperatures would be staggering, a footprint nearly impossible to conceal. Yet, the idea endures because it solves a narrative problem for the conspiracy theory. If the surface base seems too small, too exposed to satellite imagery and long-range observation, then the real work must be happening out of sight in a realm we cannot monitor. The underground base is the ultimate secure vault, a metaphor for a truth buried so deep it can never be accidentally uncovered. It taps into a profound and ancient human fascination. From the myth of Hades to Jules Verne's journey to the center of the earth, we have always imagined entire worlds beneath our feet, realms of hidden power and forgotten knowledge. The dumb law modernizes this archetype, replacing gods and dinosaurs with generals and extraterrestrials. It represents the final, logical extreme of secrecy, a place where the light of day and of public scrutiny simply cannot reach. Whether these tunnels contain silent trains rushing between laboratories or are simply storage halls for old files and equipment, their existence in the public imagination is undeniable. They complete the picture of Area 51 not as a facility, but as a portal, its surface buildings merely the entryway to a much darker, deeper, and more permanent secret. The secret was always too big for the desert alone. It needed the silver screen to become a global icon. Pop culture did not just reflect the mystery of Area 51, it actively built it brick by brick in our collective imagination. The base found its true home not in Nevada, but in the stories we told each other. A pivotal moment arrived in the summer of 1996 with the blockbuster film Independence Day. Here, the whispered rumors were given a spectacular, explosive form. In the movie, the secretive base is not just a research facility. It is the trophy room housing the wrecked alien spacecraft recovered from Roswell. When the alien invaders attack, it is the scientists from Area 51 who provide the key to defeating them. The film translated decades of conspiracy theory into a thrilling, mainstream narrative, presenting the base as both the keeper of the secret and the birthplace of humanity's salvation. It took the fringe belief and made it feel epic, plausible, and incredibly cool. This was not a documentary, it was a cultural amplifier, turning a niche obsession into a shared reference point for millions. The sheer scale of the film's success meant that for an entire generation, the phrase Area 51 would forever be linked with that iconic image of a dusty hangar hiding a city-destroying saucer. A very different tone emerged with comedies like Paul, released in 2011. Here, the base and its lore were not treated with awe but with affectionate satire. The film follows two sci-fi fans who meet a real, wisecracking alien on the run from government agents. Area 51 is the off-screen villain, a bureaucratic absurdity rather than a sinister cabal. The humor works because the audience is already in on the joke. The movie assumes you know the myths, then pokes fun at them. This shift is crucial. It showed the legend had matured to a point where it could be played for laughs, a sign it had fully embedded itself in the cultural lexicon. You do not mock what is unknown, you mock what is familiar. By treating Area 51 as a well-worn trope, these comedies confirmed its status as a permanent fixture in our storytelling landscape. Perhaps no piece of entertainment wove the base into its DNA more thoroughly than the television series The X-Files. For 9 seasons, the show's central mythology was steeped in the language of Area 51, though it often used fictionalized names like the Pentagon's Black Budget Office or the covert military unit known as the Syndicate. The show presented a world where the government's secret collaboration with extraterrestrials was an established fact, with reverse engineering programs and hidden hangars forming the backbone of a decades-long conspiracy. FBI agents Mulder and Scully were our proxies, chasing truths the audience already suspected from the tabloids. The X-Files did not invent these ideas, but it systematized them, giving them emotional weight and a compelling visual style, all shadowy meetings and glowing UFO schematics. It provided a coherent, weekly narrative that made the sprawling, confusing real-world rumors feel like a solvable puzzle. The show's famous tagline, "The truth is out there," perfectly captured the tantalizing promise of the base itself, that definitive answers existed just beyond a chain-link fence or a classified file. The interactive realm of video games took this a step further, allowing players to step inside the legend. Titles like the first-person shooter Area 51, released in 2005, and the monumental Call of Duty Black Ops in 2010, placed the gamer directly in the corridors of the secret base. In Black Ops, the protagonist is literally brainwashed inside a fictionalized version of the facility, and a key zombie mode map is set within its underground labs, battling undead test subjects. This is immersion of a different order. You are not watching someone explore the mystery, you are navigating it yourself, turning myth into a tactile, first-person experience. These games codified the aesthetic of the base, the green-tinted computer monitors, the concrete tunnels, the ominous storage tanks, making a specific visual language synonymous with government secrecy and alien tech. This constant cultural reinforcement created a powerful feedback loop. The more movies, shows, and games depicted Area 51 as the repository of the ultimate secret, the more the public expected that to be true in reality. This expectation, in turn, influenced the behavior of everyone involved. For hoaxers, pop culture provided a blueprint, a set of recognizable tropes to make their fakes feel authentic. For journalists and documentary makers, it set a tone of ominous revelation, and for the government, it may have even shaped the style of its secrecy. When the public's idea of a secret base is formed by Hollywood's dramatic high-tech visions, any real-world secrecy begins to look, by comparison, like an admission of guilt. The military's silent, faceless response to inquiries fits perfectly into the narrative pop culture wrote for it, playing the role of the stoic, withholding authority figure. In a strange way, life began to imitate the art that was imitating the alleged life. The base became a character in a story we were all co-writing, its real fences bolstered by invisible ones made of expectation, imagery, and myth. The idea of unlocking alien technology rests on a fragile assumption that human science could even recognize the tools in the workshop. To grasp the scale of this challenge, we must consult not conspiracy theorists, but physicists and materials engineers. Their consensus paints a picture not of a difficult puzzle, but of an intellectual chasm. Imagine the smartest minds of the Renaissance, a Leonardo da Vinci, presented with a modern smartphone. They could marvel at its glass surface, perhaps even pry it open to see the tiny components inside. But the fundamental principles, the quantum mechanics governing the transistors, the software code written in a language of ones and zeros, the global network of satellites it connects to, all of it would be utterly magical. They lack the foundational science, the centuries of accumulated knowledge, to even begin understanding what they are holding. This is the sobering analogy experts use for reverse engineering non-human technology. The gap might not be centuries, but millennia. Consider the materials alone. Any craft capable of interstellar travel would need to withstand forces and energies we can barely theorize. Its hull might be composed of metamaterials with atomic structures engineered in ways that defy our periodic table, or it might use fields to manipulate gravity itself, a force we can describe mathematically but cannot control. A team of our best engineers, faced with a panel made of such a substance, might not even be able to determine if it is a power source, a computer, or part of the structure. They would have no reference point, no textbook to consult. This leads to the concept of alien archaeology. When archaeologists uncover a strange artifact from an ancient civilization, they use context, comparison to known cultures, and an understanding of universal human needs to guess its purpose. But with a truly alien artifact, there is no context, there is no shared biology, no common evolutionary path, no reason to assume their logic, their mathematics, or even their perception of time aligns with ours. A device might not have an on switch as we understand it. It might be activated by a thought pattern, a biological signature, or a quantum state we cannot replicate. The very act of trying to probe it with our instruments, like an X-ray or a laser, could be as useless and destructive as trying to understand a symphony by dissecting a violin with a hammer. This perspective is framed by a famous cosmic question, the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so vast and old, where is everybody? One unsettling answer is that technological civilizations might be separated by such vast gulfs of time, and understanding that they are fundamentally invisible to each other. A species a million years more advanced might not use radio waves, might not colonize in ways we would recognize, and their artifacts might be so advanced as to be indistinguishable from natural phenomena to us. So, if we did recover a craft, it is entirely possible we have been staring at it for 75 years, running every test we can conceive, and still have learned nothing more profound than the composition of its equivalent of paint or primer. This scientific viewpoint does not disprove the existence of a crash retrieval program. Instead, it radically reframes what such a program would actually look like. It would not be a bustling lab producing prototype aircraft within a few years, like the transition from the U-2 to the SR-71. It would be a painstaking, generational endeavor, more akin to a monastery preserving a sacred, inscrutable text, with teams of scientists dedicating their entire careers to understanding a single, seemingly inert component, passing their notes to successors who may have the new physics needed for the next tiny leap. The secret, if it exists, may be far more profound and far less useful than we have ever dared to imagine. The hunt for truth has always been driven by individuals, a collection of outsiders and insiders who spent lifetimes staring into the void of official secrecy. Their stories reveal the human cost and the occasional, fleeting reward of chasing a shadow. Among the most pivotal is journalist George Knapp. In the late 1980s, as a reporter for Claus TV in Las Vegas, Knapp was not chasing UFOs, he was investigating the hidden world of the Nevada test site. His sources within the defense community began hinting at something stranger, leading him to a physicist named Bob Lazar. Knapp's methodology was that of a classic investigative reporter, verification. He did not simply air Lazar's astonishing claims, he worked to corroborate them. He scoured public records for Lazar's educational background, finding frustrating dead ends. His most crucial work was observational, going to the desert on the specific nights Lazar said test flights would occur. The footage Knapp and his cameraman captured of bizarre, maneuvering lights became the most tangible evidence attached to Lazar's story. For decades since, Knapp has been a singular figure in mainstream media, treating the topic with journalistic rigor when others dismissed it. His greatest find was not a document but a source, giving a global platform to a story that would define the modern Area 51 myth. His frustration mirrors that of all investigators, the maddening gap between compelling anecdote and unimpeachable proof. A gap the government's wall of classification ensures can never be fully closed. If George Knapp represents the public pursuit, the late billionaire Robert Bigelow represents the private, privileged one. Bigelow was not just a believer, he was a player. His company, Bigelow Aerospace, developed expandable space habitats and secured contracts with NASA. But his parallel passion was the paranormal. He founded the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies and, most significantly, was the primary private funder for the Mutual UFO Network for years. His deep pockets and serious demeanor gave the field a level of credibility it often lacked. The government itself turned to him. In 2007, the Defense Intelligence Agency awarded a multi-million-dollar contract to Bigelow's company to investigate UAPs and their potential threats, a program that would later be revealed as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Bigelow operated in the rarefied space where aerospace entrepreneurship and fringe science met. He owned the infamous Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, a hotspot for paranormal reports, treating it as a literal laboratory. His methodology was one of applied resources, using his wealth to fund scientific instrumentation and data collection where the government would not. His biggest find was arguably the government's own tacit acknowledgement, through that contract, that the phenomenon was worthy of serious study. Yet his ultimate frustration was likely the same. The secrets remained compartmentalized even for someone with his access. He passed away in 2023, a man who stood at the intersection of official secrecy and personal obsession, having peered behind the curtain but perhaps never fully through it. Beyond the journalists and the millionaires are the citizen sleuths, those who turned a hobby into a life's work. The archetype is Glenn Campbell, no relation to the singer. In the early 1990s, Campbell moved to the tiny town of Rachel, Nevada, and declared himself the Area 51 Viewer's Guide editor. He was not a spy, but an archivist of the observable. His methodology was meticulous, public, and grounded in reality. He published guides detailing the best vantage points, the schedules of the Janet Airlines flights, the radio frequencies used by security, and the legal boundaries of public land. He catalogued every vehicle, every construction project seen from distant ridges. Campbell and fellow watchers created a crowdsourced intelligence network, proving that disciplined, patient observation could extract patterns from the secrecy. His biggest finds were not alien spacecraft, but the mundane rhythms of a secret base, the proof of its constant, intense activity. He documented the government's land grab in the mid-90s, when public overlooks like Freedom Ridge were seized, providing a public record of the perimeter expanding. His frustration was physical and direct, being harassed by the camo dudes in white trucks, and ultimately witnessing his beloved observation posts being placed off limits. Campbell eventually moved on, his mission accomplished in proving that the public could and would watch the watchers. He represented the democratic impulse in the face of state secrecy, the belief that citizens have a right to scrutinize the edges of power, even if they can never see its heart. Together, these figures form a tapestry of the search. Knapp sought the story through sources and verification. Bigelow sought understanding through funding and privileged access. Campbell sought transparency through observation and public documentation. Each approached the mystery with a different toolset, yet all faced the same immutable barrier, a government whose policy of silence is a force of nature in the desert. Their decades of work have provided the scaffolding for our understanding, the timelines, the corroborating witnesses, the documented anomalies. They turned whispers into a structured inquiry. Yet their collective legacy is a poignant one, highlighting how the pursuit of a single, definitive truth can become a lifelong vocation, fueled by fragments and shadows, forever circling the glowing core of the secret itself. The desert's surface, baked hard under the Nevada sun, holds its own kind of confession. In our digital age, the most powerful tool for piercing secrecy is not a telephoto lens from a distant ridge, but a camera in orbit accessible with a few clicks. For decades, the only eyes in the sky belonged to governments, their satellite images locked in classified vaults. The landscape of Area 51 was a blank space on public maps, a literal terra incognita. That changed not with a government disclosure, but with the launch of services like Google Earth in the early 2000s. Suddenly, anyone with an internet connection could zoom in from the void of space and hover directly over the most secretive facility on the planet. This was a revolution in open-source intelligence, the practice of gathering information from publicly available sources. For the first time, the curious public could spy on the spies, or at least on their parking lots. The view from above is surprisingly revealing, yet profoundly limited. Let us start with what we can definitively see. The base is centered on the vast, pale oval of Groom Lake dry lakebed, a perfect natural runway. 3 long paved runways slash across the desert floor, the longest stretching over 23,000 feet, enough to land the space shuttle, which it did during emergency training exercises. Clustered along the southern edge are dozens of large hangars, maintenance buildings, and support structures. Their shapes and shadows are clear. You can trace the network of service roads like pale veins across the dust and see the distinctive patterns of vehicle tracks leading to remote sensor arrays on the surrounding mountains. Comparing declassified Cold War-era spy satellite photos with modern commercial imagery tells a story of constant evolution. You can witness the birth of the base in grainy 1960s images, see the expansion of the ramp areas in the 80s, and identify major new construction projects that appear almost overnight in more recent photos. One notable example is a large, rectangular excavation that appeared southeast of the main runway complex in the early 2000s, sparking intense speculation about new underground facilities. While its ultimate purpose remains unknown, its very existence was a public fact, revealed not by a leak, but by a satellite passing overhead on a routine commercial mission. This is the power and the promise of geospatial analysis. It provides an irrefutable record of physical activity. It proves the base is not static, but a living, expanding organism. You can count the number of aircraft parked outside on a given day, note the arrival of unusual support vehicles, or observe the construction of new security perimeters. This data allows watchers to build a detailed picture of the base's logistics and rhythms, all from the safety of a computer screen thousands of miles away. Yet for every answer, the satellite view poses a deeper question. The imagery confirms the scale of the visible facility, but it also screams about what is deliberately hidden. The most sensitive work undoubtedly happens inside those windowless hangars, whose roofs shield everything from prying lenses. The infamous S4 site that Bob Lazar described, a hangar built into a mountainside south of the main base, remains elusive. Searches of the corresponding coordinates in publicly available imagery show only unremarkable desert slopes. This could mean the site is so well camouflaged it blends into the mountain, or that its entrances are expertly concealed. It could also mean, as skeptics argue, that it simply is not there, a fictional detail placed in a real location to lend credibility to a story. The satellites see the parking lot but never the car. They see the warehouse but never the contents. They map the fence, but the secret lies in the empty space it encloses. This is the fundamental limitation of this God's eye view. It can show us the theater, but the play is performed behind a curtain no satellite can penetrate. The very act of looking from above reinforces the duality of the mystery. We have never had more access to the physical layout of Area 51. And yet, we have never been more certain that the real story is happening just out of frame, in the blind spots between pixels, in the shadows cast by those long, low buildings at high noon. The truth is not in the geometry we can measure, but in the meaning we cannot see. The Pacific Ocean holds a different kind of silence. On a clear November morning in 2004, 100 miles off the coast of San Diego, the United States Navy's most advanced warship, the USS Nimitz, was conducting routine training. Its radar systems, some of the most sophisticated on the planet, began tracking a series of anomalous returns. At first, they appeared as a cluster of objects hovering at 80,000 feet, an altitude reserved for satellites and specialized spy planes. Then, in a heartbeat, they dropped to sea level, a descent of over 15 miles in less than a second. This was not a glitch. This was the beginning of the Nimitz incident, a modern encounter that would become the most credible, well-documented UAP case in history, and its echoes resonate straight back to the Nevada desert. The initial radar contacts were so bizarre that the Nimitz combat commander ordered two F/A-18F Super Hornets already in the air to investigate. The pilots, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate, were seasoned aviators with thousands of flight hours. As they approached the given coordinates, they saw a disturbance in the ocean below, a large area of churning, frothing water, as if something massive was just beneath the surface. Hovering about 50 feet above this turmoil was a white, oblong object. It was smooth, with no visible wings, engines, windows, or exhaust plumes. To Fravor, it looked exactly like a large 40-foot-long tic-tac breath mint. He began a controlled, descending turn to get a closer look. The object, which had been drifting gently, suddenly reacted. It mirrored his maneuver, then accelerated with a speed and agility that defied all known physics. It was gone in an instant, Fravor said, like a ping-pong ball bouncing off a wall. It disappeared from their visual sight and from the fighter jet's advanced radar. Moments later, the Princeton, a guided missile cruiser in the carrier group, required the object on its powerful SPY-1 radar. It was now 60 miles away, near the pilot's designated cap point, a location only they and the Princeton knew. The Tic-Tac had traversed that distance in under a minute, implying speeds over 24,000 miles per hour. Most tellingly, it did so without a sonic boom, without a thermal signature, and without any visible means of propulsion. This is the core of the mystery and the direct link to 70 years of Area 51 whispers. The performance envelope described by Commander Fravor and corroborated by sensor data, instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities, trans-medium travel between air and water, and a complete lack of inertial effects, is not just beyond current human technology. It redefines the laws of aerodynamics and physics as we understand them. For decades, the law surrounding Groom Lake spoke of captured craft that could manipulate gravity, that moved by bending space-time itself. The descriptions from whistleblowers and conspiracy theorists were always abstract, couched in speculative physics. The Nimitz encounter provided a real-world, observed performance chart. The Tic-Tac did not just fly fast, it moved as if the air, the water, and inertia itself were mere suggestions. When the Pentagon finally declassified and released the gun camera footage of the encounter in 2020, the public saw exactly what the pilots described: a small, white, featureless object skittering across the screen, making minute, instantaneous course corrections that no known aircraft or drone could survive. The official response was a masterpiece of careful language. The Navy confirmed the videos were authentic, that the objects were unidentified aerial phenomena, and that they displayed flight characteristics unknown to our current inventory. They did not say alien, they did not say secret American technology. The vacuum of an official explanation invites the old questions back with renewed force. If this is a black project, a human-made vehicle, then its capabilities represent a quantum leap so profound it might as well be alien. It would mean the whispered reverse engineering programs were not just successful, but spectacularly so, producing a craft that operates on principles we have not yet published in any scientific journal. The logical home for such a leap, the only facility with the history, secrecy, and infrastructure to birth it, is the very place we have been discussing for this entire journey. The connection is not a documented fact, but a narrative one. The Nimitz incident moved the mystery from the realm of dusty desert folklore into the crisp, digital reality of military radar tapes and sworn pilot testimony. It provided a tangible, modern artifact, the Tic-Tac, whose behavior perfectly mirrors the legendary capabilities always ascribed to the secrets of Area 51. This forces a haunting parallel. Just as the strange silhouettes of the U-2 and SR-71 Blackbird spawned the first UFO rumors over the desert in the 1950s, could the tic-tac be the 21st century equivalent? A secret, human-made marvel so advanced that its own pilots, upon encountering it, could only report a UAP. Or is the parallel evidence of a different truth, that the object Commander Fravor chased was not made in a hangar at Groom Lake, but was a visitor demonstrating the very technology we have been trying to steal or understand for generations? The Nimitz encounter does not answer the ultimate question, but it powerfully reframes it. The mystery is no longer buried in the past or hidden behind a fence in Nevada. It is here now, operating with impunity in our controlled airspace, watched by our best warriors and recorded by our best sensors. It suggests that the secret, whatever its origin, is not sitting in a warehouse. It is alive, it is operational, and it is daring us to catch up. The Nimitz pilots could report what they saw, but they could never reveal what they did not know. This is the power of the system, a legal architecture built not just to guard machines, but to silence minds. The most effective tool for keeping the secrets of Area 51 is not a fence or a security patrol, it is a signature on a piece of paper. Every single person who works at the site, from the janitor to the lead physicist, enters a labyrinth of legal obligations before they ever board the Janet Airlines flight. It begins with a security clearance, an exhaustive background investigation that scrutinizes their entire life. This is not a simple job interview, it is a psychological and financial colonoscopy, probing for any vulnerability that could be exploited. Once granted, the clearance is a privilege and it comes with a cage. The worker must sign a series of non-disclosure agreements, documents whose language is sweeping and absolute. These NDAs are not about protecting quarterly earnings, they are about protecting information deemed vital to national survival. They stipulate that the signer will never, at any point in their natural life, disclose any classified information they learn during their employment. This obligation does not end at retirement, it extends until death. To violate it is not merely to be fired, it is to commit a federal crime, potentially treason, carrying penalties of decades in prison. This creates a profound psychological prison. A worker can know a world-altering truth, but they must live a double life, carrying that burden in perfect silence, unable to discuss the core of their professional life with a spouse, a therapist, or even a colleague from a different compartmentalized project. The system is designed to create islands of knowledge, ensuring no single person can ever see the whole picture, and ensuring that anyone who tries to speak sees their own signature staring back at them as a threat. This legal wall met its ultimate test not with UFOs but with illness. When the sick workers from the base, suffering from rare cancers they believed were caused by toxic burn pits, attempted to sue for justice, they encountered the state secrets privilege in its most brutal form. This is a legal doctrine that allows the government to intervene in a court case and have it dismissed entirely, arguing that allowing the case to proceed would force the disclosure of information so sensitive it would harm national security. In these workers' lawsuits, government lawyers did just that. They argued that even discussing what materials were burned, what safety protocols were in place, or what illnesses were reported, would reveal classified details about the operations at Groom Lake. The judges, faced with this absolute assertion from the executive branch, had little choice. The cases were thrown out. The message was chillingly clear. The government's right to protect its secrets trumps a citizen's right to seek redress for demonstrable harm. The state secrets privilege transformed a legal system built for justice into an instrument of impunity, proving that the cloak of national security could be used to shield the government from accountability for its own potential negligence. But what if someone decides to speak anyway, to become a whistleblower despite the risks? The law suggests the consequences are dire, pointing to a controversial set of documents known as the Majestic 12 or MJ-12. These papers, which first surfaced in the 1980s, purport to be a top-secret executive order from President Truman, establishing a committee of 12 scientists, military leaders, and intelligence officials to manage the alien question. The documents are almost certainly elaborate forgeries, riddled with anachronisms and factual errors. Yet their lasting impact is not in their authenticity, but in the policy they describe. One passage is particularly grim. It outlines a need for a covert policy of disinformation to debunk and ridicule genuine sightings, and most ominously, it authorizes, quote, termination with extreme prejudice of any individual who compromises the project. While the MJ-12 papers are fake, the concept they codify entered the bloodstream of the conspiracy theory. It gave a name majestic to the faceless secrecy, and it provided a dark rationale for the fear that surrounds whistleblowers. Real-world events have at times fed this fear. Individuals linked to the UFO topic, like Phil Schneider or activist William Cooper, met violent, controversial ends. While these deaths are officially attributed to suicide or criminal incidents, within the community they are often viewed as warnings, proof of the alleged termination policy. This creates a perfect, self-reinforcing cycle of silence. The real, crushing weight of lifelong NDAs and the state secrets privilege makes secrecy the norm. The whispered legends of a deadly penalty for leaks, whether true or not, inject that secrecy with a shot of primal fear. Together, they build a wall that is both legal and psychological. To challenge it requires not just courage, but a willingness to risk everything: your career, your freedom, and according to the darkest rumors, your life. This is why definitive proof remains so elusive. The system is not designed to be leak-proof. It is designed to make the cost of leaking unthinkably high for anyone who might hold the key. The secret is protected not by a single padlock, but by the collective weight of thousands of signed oaths, backed by the full force of law and the specter of a myth that might just be true. A fortress of secrecy is only as strong as the world's ability to peer over its walls. In an age of commercial satellites that can read a license plate from orbit, of drone swarms and cyber attacks that bypass physical gates, does the concept of a secret base in the middle of a desert feel like a relic? Could Area 51 become obsolete, a dusty monument to a bygone era of espionage? The answer is more nuanced than a simple yes or no. Its role has undoubtedly evolved, but its utility endures in specific, critical ways. The open desert airspace and the vast, restricted land surrounding Groom Lake remain an irreplaceable national asset. This is not a place for storing old secrets. It is a living laboratory for creating new ones. The most plausible current work almost certainly involves the next generation of autonomous systems. Think of drones not as small quadcopters, but as full-scale, stealthy, unmanned combat air vehicles, flying wing designs that make the B-2 Spirit look conventional. Here, they can be tested beyond the prying lenses of aviation enthusiasts, their radar signatures measured against the barren mountains, their artificial intelligence algorithms pushed to the edge without risk of public observation. Directed energy weapons like high-powered lasers or microwave emitters designed to disable missiles and electronics need vast, empty ranges to be safely evaluated. The Nevada desert provides the perfect, contained arena for turning science fiction into battlefield reality. So, while the age of the manned spy plane may have passed, the need for a place to develop and test its robotic successors has never been greater. The secrecy is less about hiding the existence of a program and more about concealing its specific capabilities, its vulnerabilities, and the timeline of its readiness. In that sense, the physical base is as relevant as ever. Yet, layered atop this ongoing work is the weight of history, the concept of legacy secrets. Imagine a vault or a sealed tunnel within the facility. Inside might not be a flying saucer, but something equally sensitive from a different technological era. Perhaps it is the prototype of a stealth material from the 1980s that still holds value, or the incomplete wreckage of a foreign adversary's spy satellite recovered decades ago. It could be archives of experimental data from Cold War projects so bizarre they were never declassified. These artifacts are not being actively used, but their revelation could still compromise methods, expose old operations, or simply embarrass a nation. They are buried not in the sand, but in the bureaucracy, deemed still too sensitive to see the light of day, turning the base into a kind of classified attic for the military-industrial complex. Will this place ever be abandoned or open to the public like a museum? Almost certainly not. The cost of declassifying and sanitizing the entire site would be astronomical, and the risk of missing something critical too high. Its legal perimeter, established over 70 years, is itself a valuable barrier. More intriguingly, Area 51's greatest power in the 21st century may be symbolic and psychological. It functions as the world's most famous decoy. By maintaining the aura of supreme secrecy around this known location, the government focuses a staggering amount of public, media, and adversarial intelligence attention on one spot on the map. This draws a metaphorical circle in the sand and dares the world to look inside, while the truly groundbreaking black projects of today migrate to realms far harder to scrutinize. Think of the deep ocean where private corporations and the Navy operate vast, secretive underwater ranges, or consider the ultimate high ground, space itself, where classified satellites are launched and activities are hidden in the glare of the sun. The next generation of secrets may not be housed in a hangar at all, but in a server farm buried under a mountain, or in the algorithms of a quantum computer developed in a bland office park nowhere near Nevada. Area 51, then, becomes a masterpiece of misdirection. It is the locked room everyone is trying to break into, while the real treasure is quietly moved next door. Its enduring mystery is not a bug in the system, but a feature. It consumes our curiosity, satisfying our need for a tangible locus of conspiracy, all while the cutting edge of secrecy slips away into the void of space or the silence of the abyss. The base may never tell us its oldest secrets because its most important job now might be to keep us all looking in the wrong direction. The journey ends where it began, in a silent desert valley under a vast star-filled sky. From its birth as a Cold War sanctuary for the U-2 spy plane to its transformation into the world's most famous fortress of the unknown, Area 51 has defied simple explanation for over 70 years. We have followed the evidence from declassified government documents to the wild claims of whistleblowers, from the deep psychological needs that fuel belief to the impenetrable legal barriers that enforce silence. The truth, if we could ever hold it, would likely be a complex alloy forged from multiple metals. It is almost certainly the site of groundbreaking human technology, tested under a cloak of secrecy so profound it becomes indistinguishable from magic. That secrecy is then compounded by deliberate disinformation, a tool to mislead adversaries and muddy the waters of public inquiry. Into this void pours our collective imagination, a timeless human desire for contact, for meaning, for a universe more wondrous than our daily reality. This potent mix, this feedback loop of secrecy, speculation, and storytelling, is what sustains the legend. The question of whether alien artifacts rest in a hangar there may never be answered to universal satisfaction. But perhaps that is not the point. Area 51's most enduring secret is not a piece of hardware. It is its power as a modern myth, a psychological landmark that forces us to look up from our mundane world and wonder what might be possible. It challenges our trust in authority, ignites our curiosity, and gives shape to our deepest hopes and fears about technology and the cosmos. So, what do you believe is hidden behind those distant fences? Is it the next leap in human engineering or a relic from another star? Share your theories in the comments below. Subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries, and remember, sometimes the truth is not just out there waiting to be found. It is buried under layers of our own making, in the stories we tell ourselves about the dark spaces on the map and the brilliant, unexplained lights in the sky.